He's been a White House Chief of Staff, he's been Secretary of Defense, and he also headed up the CIA, and he also wrote a best-selling book.
He's not very important.
There's nothing he hasn't really done once before. Joining us now, it's our privilege to have with us Leon Panetta. Welcome, Mr. Secretary.
Welcome.
Nice to be with you.
Are you as excited and interested as everybody else at 10 o'clock today when James Comey goes in front of the Intelligence Committee in the House?
Well, obviously, a lot of people are going to pay attention, but I suspect he's going to basically confirm what we already know from both the chairman and ranking members of the House Intelligence Committee and the Senate Intelligence Committees, that there's no evidence that, in fact, President Obama ordered the wiretapping. And hopefully, that might help resolve this issue and get us focused on the more important things happening this week.
Do you think, Mr. Panetta, that we're going to find out if other people, perhaps in the Trump circle, may have been surveilled or the targets of an investigation or anything like that? Because you know how this president operates. Sometimes he speaks generally about things which in the intel community are very specific.
You know, I would suspect that the director of the FBI is not going to go into that kind of information. You know, he may be asked about it, but I think he's going to be pretty circumspect about what's happening on the Russian front, so to speak. I don't think we're going to get a lot of information on just exactly what they're looking at in those issues.
How hard is it going to be to find out who this leaker is?
Well, you know, I do think that both the intelligence agencies involved as well as others are going to take a look at that because, you know, one thing you can't have in the intelligence business is people who leak classified information. So hopefully there will be an effort to try to find out who was responsible for that. Mr.
Secretary, I remember when you were heading up the CIA, the first thing, one of the first things Attorney General Holder did was say, we're going to get to the bottom of who did this enhanced interrogation. And you went to bat, because there was terror within the agency, for the CIA and said, listen, I know I just got hired here, but I got to protect my people. In the interim, from what you know and the sources you have, did the President Trump also get started off on the wrong foot? Because of some of the things he said, and inside the intelligence community, was there some retribution they feel they had to put on this president?
Well, you know, these are people that are professional, and you know, they're not Republicans or Democrats. They're just good Americans trying to do a job. And I do think he got off on the wrong foot with some of the criticisms of the intelligence community. But my hope is that a combination of a new director at the CIA plus a new director at Defense Intelligence Operation, along with others, are going to help restore a degree of confidence between the president and the intelligence community. His first duty is to protect the country. Frankly, he can't protect the country without good intelligence.
Absolutely, and everybody's got to be on his team because he is the leader of Team America for the most part. But you got to, Mr. Panetta, figure out who it was who ordered the okay to unmask Michael Flynn's name, because that was classified. Clearly, he was being surveilled. Somebody said, okay, take his name off or take the mask off. And that was classified. Somebody should go to jail, according to Rand Paul yesterday on one of the Sunday shows. What do you think?
Well, look, classified information ought to remain classified. So, you know, if there was a leak that took place of classified information, I think it is important to try to find out.
Right, I'm not talking about the leak. I'm talking about whoever okayed the unmasking of an American citizen's name.
Yeah, you know, it obviously depends on whether or not that particular individual was involved in any possible offense with regards to you know, our intelligence capabilities. So, you know, my hope is that when a private citizen is involved in those kinds of communications, we ought to do everything possible to try to protect that private citizen.
Mr. Panetta, last week, Mr. Trump, or President Trump, he released his skinny budget. In that skinny budget, there was a lot of money that he was going to pour into defense and into the military and supporting our troops. Do you agree with that?
Well, I've agreed that we ought to strengthen our defense capability. I mean, we've had a terrible budget situation that, frankly, both parties are responsible for. We had a budget act that cut almost $500 billion from the defense budget, but then we had the so-called sequester, which was this cut across the board that was implemented in the Congress that hurt defense readiness that much more.
Right.
So I do think that we need to gradually provide not only an increase with defense,
right,
but we need greater certainty with regards to the defense budget. And we also need to look at personnel issues to make sure that we try to update the personnel system so that it meets the needs of the 21st century.
So, Mr. Secretary, when you were Secretary of Defense, I don't know how you felt about it, but I know that you did write about it. Secretary Panetta and Secretary Gates both were upset. There was too many people meddling in defense industry, in defense things from the White House. Now today, the story has been totally different. On purpose, it seems this president is giving the Secretary of Defense new autonomous ability to go and direct forces the way they want without checking back to the White House. Mattis put 1,000 Marine reserves into Syria and then told the president afterwards. Are you for this type of arrangement between the president and Secretary of Defense to give defense the ability to act on their own volition?
Well, I do think it's important that we allow commanders in the field to make certain decisions with regards to defending their forces. So I've always felt that it was important to trust our commanders in the field with that kind of judgment. Having said that, it's also important to keep the White House informed. It's not that you just kind of let people go ahead and do their thing without having the President of the United States know exactly what they're doing. So obviously you want the White House involved, but at the same time, when it comes to those critical decisions that oftentimes have to be made
quickly
with split-second timing, then I think the authority does rest with the commanders in the field.
All right. Leon Panetta, we thank you very much for joining us today. Great to hear your point of view.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Nice to be with you.
You bet. All right, 21 minutes before the top of the hour on this Monday.
That's right. Heather has some headlines for us. Yes. Hey, Heather.
Good.